Now you're going to take the top of the dress and just make sure that you take and turn it over so the wrong side is facing you. And then you're going to start from the bottom edge and just put your crochet hook, and along this bottom the stitches aren't completely even, so you're going to work the stitches through here as best as you can. So for this first one, I'm going under my first stitch, and I'm just going to go ahead and bring up the yarn and do a chain 1, and then turn the work over so I can tie a knot. And I'm going to take this loose yarn end and I'm going to bury it as I work. So just hold that off to the side. And then you're just going to do 1 single crochet into the same stitch that you just did your chain 1 in. So go behind the loose yarn end, bring up a loop, 2 loops on the hook, yarn over and go through both for a single crochet. And then you're going to go into the next stitch over behind the loose yarn end, bring up a loop, 2 loops on the hook, yarn over and go through both for a single crochet. And you're going to do a single crochet all the way around, all the way across to the end, and then you're not going to work into the last stitches here where the button is. So right to the edge of the button, you're going to stop with your last single crochet and then come back. I just wanted to show you an alternative for the front. If you want to leave the little gap right in the center here, which is what I'm going to do, you can do a chain 2. Right when you reach the curve, do a chain 2, 1, 2, and then go right into the single crochet, skip 2, and go right into the single crochet on the other side. I'll just show you. So here you can see how I skipped these couple stitches in here where the curve is, and it just leaves a little bit of a triangle right at the center of the dress. So you can see where I stopped with my single crochets, and I placed a total of 16 single crochets across the bottom of my top, and you can see what it looks like on the front, and where I have the little gap here under the bead. Now you're going to go ahead and do a chain 1 and then turn your work and do 1 single crochet into every stitch. Don't put a single crochet in the base of your chain 1 stitch. You're going to go to the next stitch over and do a single crochet, and then do a single crochet into every stitch back across, and then come back. Now if you made the little chain 2 space in the top, then you would just take your crochet hook, go into that chain 2 space, and do 2 single crochet in that space, and then go into the next space over and do your single crochet back across. So you can see how my work looks. Let me just turn it over, and this is what the top looks like. And now you're going to go ahead and finish off. After you did your last single crochet on that row, go ahead and finish off. So yarn over and bring the yarn through, and bring enough yarn through to sew your top to the skirt. And it's okay if you run out of yarn, you can always just get more yarn to work with, but I like to have it already attached before I start sewing. So now I have enough loose yarn end to sew the top onto the skirt. Now you're just going to take your skirt and you're going to decide where you want to have the front of the skirt. to lie. And so I'm going to have the front of the skirt just like this. So now I'm going to place my tapestry needle on the loose yarn end and just line up where you want the bead for the front of the dress, and then just fold it down so that you have the right side on top of the right side. And then you're just going to take and fold the stitches like this, wrap around the top of the dress, and then just take your tapestry needle and go through the stitch on the bottom of the top and the stitch at the top of the skirt, and just weave the tapestry needle in and out and sew the top to the skirt. So now you're going to take each individual flower with its stem, and you're just going to place it right in to the space between the scrunchie and the bottom of the skirt. And you can see how it sits really pretty along the waist of the skirt. And then on the inside, you can see, just leave the stem on the inside of the skirt for now. And we'll come back and sew those in. I'll show you how. But for now, go ahead and alternate your pretty flowers, space them apart, and make sure that they're close together as you place them all the way around the skirt. Once you have all your flowers placed, go ahead and turn your dress inside out so that all the flower stems are poking up on the inside of the skirt. Now you're going to take the stem and you're going to fold it and hook it through. Just fold the stem and hook it through one of the rows so it comes back up as a hook, and then just squeeze it together. So you're hooking them into one of the rows. Then you take your tapestry needle with the same colored yarn, and you're just going to take and sew the hook in place. Make sure you only go through the beige colored yarn and not through the blue portion of the dress. And then leave enough loose yarn end to tie a knot. And I'm tying my knot directly over the hook I just placed with the stem. And then I'm just going to make another couple passes with my tapestry needle in the yarn just to sew it in place, that hook in place. And you can go in and out of that hook too, making sure that it's secure. And then you're just going to weave your way to the next hook. And then you're going to sew that hook in place. And you're going to do that all the way around back to the first flower stem that you sewed. And you can make sure that your little stem, the pointy end, gets folded down. And I'm just going in and out and just sewing with my tapestry needle, making sure that the hook is sewn in place. So go ahead and finish sewing all of your stems in place and then come back. Okay, so I buried all of my stems on the inside and you can't even barely notice them. Go ahead and bury all of your loose yarn ends and then come back. Now you're just going to take your regular sewing needle and some white thread, and you're going to take the backs of the flowers, go from the inside, and you can go through the scrunchie and take and sew the leaf. There's a leaf on the back of the flower. You just want to make sure that you sew that to the scrunchie and leave enough sewing thread on the back to tie your knot. And you just need a couple of stitches to make sure that the flower stays next to the dress. You're going to sew each of the flowers in place. Oh, got tangled a little bit. And for me, I just put one good stitch in the back of the leaf per flower to hold it in place. Once you have the flowers sewn on the dress, then you can go ahead and tie your ribbon around the waist. And then I also went ahead and tied ribbons in the hair of the doll too. I'm not sure if your doll has the long hair, but if it does, you can tie a pretty ribbon in the hair. Now we're going to make the hat. So the first thing we're going to do is a magic circle, and you're just going to drape the yarn across your 4 fingers and use your thumb to stabilize, and then wrap the yarn around your 2 middle fingers and then hold it in place with your pinky and your thumb. And then I'm still using my J or 6mm crochet hook. Just go under those 2 loops. Then you're going to yarn over and bring the yarn up to bring up a loop, and then yarn over, turn the hook upside down and go through that loop for a slip knot. And now you're going to do 6 single crochet into the magic circle. There's 1, 2, 6. And then just take your forefinger and thumb and then just hold it at the base of those 6 single crochet. And then you're just going to take, you have the 2 loops on the opposite side. You're just going to pull on one of them to close. If it doesn't close, let go and pull on the other one. And then take that loose yarn in and pull on that. Don't pull it too tightly because we can close it more later. Now you're going to do 2 single crochet into the first stitch. So go into that first stitch. Then you're going to bring up a loop. Sometimes that first stitch, do it again. Okay, now 2 loops on the hook, yarn over and go through both for a single crochet, and then you're going to do 1 more single crochet in the same stitch. Now you're going to do 2 single crochet into every stitch around for a total of 12, and then come back. Now we're going to, if you have a little bit of a hole in the center of your magic circle, you're going to go ahead and turn your work over and just pull on that loose yarn end tightly until it closes up the center of your magic circle. Now you're going to want a yarn marker, and I'm just going to use my loose yarn scrap and just put it right where I left off. And now I'm going to do an increase round. So I'm going to do 1 single crochet into the next stitch, and then 2 single crochet into the second stitch. And you're going to repeat that pattern all the way around back to the beginning. Now go ahead and take your yarn marker and move it up to where you left off. And now I'm just going to show you with my tapestry needle. You can see that on a stitch you have the back loop and then you have the front loop of the stitch, and then here is the center of the stitch. So the back loop and then the front loop and the center of the stitch. So we're going to be working into the back loops only with our crochet hook. So now in the next stitch over, you're going to go right into the center of the stitch in the back loop only and bring up a loop, 2 loops on the hook, yarn over and go through both for a single crochet. So now in the next stitch, you're going to go down the center of the stitch into the back loop only and do a single crochet. So I'm going to do one more with you right in the center of the stitch, grab that back loop only, bring up a loop, and go through both for single crochet. And then go ahead and repeat that all the way around back to the yarn marker. Now go ahead and take your yarn marker and move it up to the next row. And you're going to go into both loops of the next stitch. So both loops, bring up a loop, 2 loops on the hook, yarn over and go through both for a single crochet. And you're going to do 1 single crochet into every stitch all the way around back to the yarn marker. Now you're going to do a slip stitch into the next stitch over, so go into that next stitch, and then you're going to yarn over and bring the yarn through both loops on your hook for a slip stitch. Then you're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3. That's going to count as your first double crochet for this round. Now in this next stitch, you're going to do 2 double crochet. So yarn over, go into that next stitch, bring up a loop, 3 loops on the hook, yarn over and go through 2, yarn over and go through 2. So you can do 1 more double crochet into the same stitch, and we're going to repeat that pattern all the way around back to the yarn marker. So I'm going to do 1 more set with you. So I'm going to do 1 double crochet into the next stitch, and then 2 double crochet into the second stitch. And then you're going to repeat that pattern all the way around back to the yarn marker. Now we're just going to do a slip stitch into the top stitch of that first double crochet that we did. So you just yarn over and bring the yarn through both loops on your hook for a slip stitch. And then we're going to finish off, yarn over and just pull enough yarn through to bury into your work. Now go ahead and just bury your loose yarn ends. Now you're going to take your hat and make sure you have the right side showing, and then also the seam where you did your slip stitches should be towards the back. And then you're just going to take your flowers and place them right at the base of the double crochet rim. So you have your 2 flowers, and then on the inside you're just going to bury the stems. So the same way you did on the skirt, you just kind of hook the stem into the stitches. And then just sew them in place with your tapestry needle and the same colored thread. So you can see how I folded down the stems, and I have my yarn and tapestry needle, and I'm just going to go through to the front and leave enough yarn for tying your knot, and then just weave in and out of the stems until they're sewn in place. Now you're going to take your hat and you're going to go into the back where you have your slip stitch seam and put your crochet hook through that back stitch with the right side facing you and hook the yarn. And then you're going to do a chain 1 and then just tie a knot. And then you're going to do a chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to bury the loose yarn end as we work. So you're going to yarn over, go into that next stitch over behind the loose yarn end, bring up a loop, 3 loops on the hook, yarn over and go through 2, yarn over and go through 2, and then you're going to do 1 more double crochet in the same stitch, and we're going to repeat that pattern all the way around. So I'm going to do 1 more set with you, 1 double crochet in the next stitch, and then 2 double crochet into the second stitch, and you're going to repeat that pattern back to the beginning. So I ended with a single double crochet in my last stitch. Now I'm going to do a slip stitch into that first double crochet that I did into the top stitch, and then I'm going to finish off, yarn over, and just pull enough to bury into your work. So go ahead and bury your loose yarn end and then come back. Now you're just going to cut a length of ribbon, and you're just going to take and see which sides of the hat that you want to have the ribbon come down, and you can even fold up one side of the hat if you want for that style, or you can just leave it down. I'm going to fold up this one side, so I want it to come, the ribbon to come out on this side, so I'm going to bring the ribbon up through this stitch, and you can kind of use your crochet hook to help hook the ribbon and bring that up. And then you're just going to leave some ribbon for tying the bow, and then you're just going to take the ribbon up along the back so you can weave the ribbon in and out the back part of the hat, along, not along the rim, but along the double crochet further up. So you want to skip 1 stitch on the back side, and then you can skip more stitches along the back. I'm going to skip 3 stitches and then go back down with the ribbon. I'm just going to weave the ribbon in and out along the back to the other side. So go ahead and finish weaving the ribbon in and out to the other side where you want the ribbon to hang down and tie into a bow. I'm just going to go ahead and just finish with you. So you can see how I'm weaving along the back. Now I'm going to come up here and I'm just going to check, and I want to go to about right here. So I'm going to keep weaving in and out with my ribbon. And I'm going to go down there where my finger is, because that's where I want to end with the ribbon. Then I just want to double check, and that looks about right. So now you can tie the hat onto the doll. So now I just want to show you a close-up of the doll and her hat. See how pretty the hat looks. And then also her hair on the back looks beautiful. So for the parasol, you're going to start with the magic circle. So you're going to take your yarn and just drape it across your 4 middle fingers and use your thumb to stabilize, and then just wrap it around your 2 middle fingers twice and hold it with your pinky and your thumb. And I'm still using my J or 6mm crochet hook, and you're going to bring up a loop, yarn over, turn the hook upside down and go through that loop for your slip knot. And now you're going to do 6 single crochet into the magic circle. And then you're going to take your forefinger and thumb and just hold it at the base of the 6 single crochet, and then of course you have the 2 loops on the other side of the magic circle. Just pull on one, and if it doesn't close, just let go and pull on the other one, but this one's closing. And then take your loose yarn in and pull on that, and you don't have to pull too tightly on it yet. We can close it more later. Now you're going to do 2 single crochet into every stitch around. So I'm going to go into that first stitch and do 2 single crochet. So that's 1, 2, and then go ahead and finish doing 2 single crochet into every stitch for a total of 12, and then come back. Now you're just going to take your yarn marker and place it right where you left off, and we're going to do an increase round. So you're going to go into the next stitch over, and you're just going to do a single crochet, and then in the second stitch you're going to do 2 single crochet, and you're just going to repeat that pattern all the way around back to the yarn marker. Okay, so now you're going to take and move your yarn marker up to where you left off, and now you're just going to work into the back loop only. So you go into the middle of the next stitch into the back loop only. You're going to bring up a loop, 2 loops on the hook, yarn over and go through both for a single crochet, and then in the next stitch you go down the center into the back loop only and another single crochet. You're going to do that all the way around back to the yarn marker. Okay, then you take your yarn marker and move it up, and now you're going to do 1 single crochet into the next stitch under both loops. So go under both loops and do a single crochet, and then you're going to do 1 single crochet into every stitch all the way around back to the yarn marker. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and move the yarn marker up to where we left off, and we're going to do a slip stitch into the next stitch over. So go ahead and go into the next stitch over, yarn over, and bring the yarn through both loops on your hook for a slip stitch. Then you can go ahead and chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And now we're going to do an increase round. Go ahead and take your yarn marker and move it. You actually don't need your yarn marker, but if you want it, you can just put it right where you left off. And now we're going to do 2 double crochet into the next stitch. And we're going to repeat that pattern all the way around back to the first double crochet. So 1 double crochet into the next stitch, and then 2 double crochet into the second stitch. And then repeat that pattern all the way around back to the beginning. And then come back. And then you go ahead and do a slip stitch into that first stitch, the top stitch of the first stitch. Yarn over and bring the yarn through both loops on your hook. Then you can go ahead and chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Now you want to turn your work so that the wrong side is facing you. You can pull on your loose yarn end too to close the magic circle up. And the reason why we're facing the wrong side toward us is because I'm going to add beads. You don't have to add beads if you don't want to, but if you do, then go ahead and turn the work so that the wrong side is facing you. And now you're going to chain 1 and then bring a bead up and place it right next to the hook, and then do another chain 1, and then do a double crochet in the same stitch. We're doing a V-stitch with a bead in the center. So now you're going to skip a stitch. Actually, we're not going to skip a stitch. We're going to do V-stitches in every stitch around. So go ahead and yarn over, go into the next stitch, bring up a loop, 3 loops on the hook, yarn over and go through 2, yarn over and go through 2, and then chain 1, and then bring a bead forward on the yarn, and then you're going to chain one again, and then you're going to do another double crochet into the same stitch. You're going to repeat that pattern all the way around back to the beginning. When you reach the beginning, you're going to go ahead and just do a slip stitch into that top stitch of the first double crochet. Just yarn over and bring the yarn through both loops on your hook for a slip stitch, and then you're going to finish off, yarn over and bring enough yarn through to bury into your work. And then just take and bury all of your loose yarn ends. Now you're going to take your copper wire and you're just going to measure it around the circle until you get the size that you need. And then once you have the size that you need for the parasol, you're just going to take and cut a little bit longer than the size of the circle. You just take the scissors and just cut that. And then you just take and measure it again, and then where it overlaps is where you're going to twist the copper wire together. So you're just going to twist it around, and then just make sure that you have the right size for your circle. And now we're going to take and crochet the yarn around the copper wire. Now you're just going to take your yarn and tie a knot around the copper wire. And then you're going to take your crochet hook, and you can bury the loose yarn end as you work, but you're going to take your crochet hook and go right into the center of the circle. You're going to bring up a loop, and then you're going to do a chain one, and then you're going to go into the circle again, bring up a loop. Now you have two loops on your hook. You're going to yarn over and go through both for a single crochet. And you're going to keep doing a single crochet all the way around the circle until the copper wire is completely covered, and then come back. Once the copper wire is completely covered, you can go ahead and do a slip stitch into that first single crochet that you created. Let me just go under both loops. And then just yarn over and bring the yarn through both loops on your hook for a slip stitch. And then you're going to finish off and bring enough yarn through to sew the copper wire around your parasol. So I'm just going to bring a lot of yarn through. Don't worry if you can also just use the yarn on the tapestry needle. You don't have to do the long yarn end for this part of it. You can always just cut off some more yarn if you need it, is what I'm trying to say. So here I just cinched down the knot, and then I'm going to take my tapestry needle and put it onto the long end that I left for sewing. Now you want to take your parasol and make sure you have the right side facing you, and just place it right up against where you finished off. And you're just going to take your tapestry needle and you're going to weave it through the stitch on the parasol, and you're just going to sew the parasol onto the copper wire rim. So you just go ahead and sew your copper wire rim onto your parasol and just kind of cinch it to fit. And after you're finished sewing it on, come back and I'll show you what to do next. Now you're going to take your decorative trim and you're just going to measure the trim around the parasol. And you can get just a little bit extra not much, just a little bit to overlap, just to make sure you have enough to sew onto the parasol. And then you're going to take your tapestry needle and the same colored yarn, and you can take and place the decorative trim along the rim of the parasol, and you can take your tapestry needle and you can sew right along the center. The decorative trim that I chose, I can sew along the center, but if you have a different trim that you're not able to do that, then you can use just a regular sewing needle and thread and just take and sew your decorative trim on that way. And you can see how it's going to look on mine. Just wanted to show you a close-up of this decorative trim, and you can see where I placed all of my stitches along it, and I'm just going to show you where I placed some of the stitches. So I just came up through one of the holes, and then there's another second hole right next to it that I went down into, and it just looks really pretty. You can see how I sewed that on. Then I just overlap the last part of it and make my last stitch, and then I'm going to tie a knot on the back and then just bury my loose yarn ends. Now for the parasol, you're going to use the same design that you used for the top, and you could take your copper wire, and I cut 21 inches of the copper wire, and then you're going to fold it in half. And then you're going to form a hook with one of the ends that you folded. The folded end is going to be the hook, so you're just going to kind of bend that to form a hook. Then you're going to take the wire and go, this is the right side with the beads showing, and then you're going to go through the wrong side, right through the center of the magic circle, and you want to make sure that both copper wire ends go through. You can see how I have both, and then the hook end is on the bottom. And then you want to make sure you have the size right, so measure it on the doll. So you just take your doll and just measure and see how high up the parasol will be. Mine is 7 inches from the hook to where I went out. And now I'm going to place a bead, whatever bead that you want for the top of the umbrella. Just going to place that onto both of the copper wires. You can see where the bead just goes right in there. And then I'm going to fold the copper wires down and go back through the same opening. And once you have looped the wire and the bead is sitting on the top of the parasol, you can see where the looped portion goes through to the bottom. Then you can twist the copper wire on the inside of the parasol to make sure that it stays on there and doesn't come back through. So you just want to make sure you twist it well on the inside of the parasol. And then you can take your tapestry needle and the same colored yarn, and then we're going to sew it in place. Now I'm holding the bead so it's sitting firmly on the top of the parasol, and then I'm going to go in through the top with my tapestry needle in the same colored yarn. Leave enough yarn for tying a knot, and then I'm just going to sew through that loop, and I'm going to go through the bead. Well, actually won't go through, so I'll just go through the loop first, the loop of the copper wire. I'm just going to sew the bead and the copper wire in place so it doesn't slip down. And then you just tie a knot on the inside and bury your loose yarn ends and then come back. So here is the parasol, and I took the copper wire and put it right through the hat where the ribbon went down and tied under the doll's face, and then the rest of the copper wire hooked around her hand, and then she's able to hold the parasol nicely. And you can position the parasol how you like, or however you find works best.